Hello, everyone.
Hey guys, welcome into the podcast. On today's podcast, we are going to be talking about the importance of communicating with authority.
But of course, before we get to that, if you're enjoying this content, would you please hit the like button so that we know? And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button, because every time someone hits the subscribe button, it makes me smile.
And if you want to get bonus content, help support what we do here, the best place to do that is over on Patreon. So a link to our Patreon is down below.
Yeah, so communication, not anything that anybody struggles with in a relationship, right?
I definitely think that communication is one of the main points that couples struggle with when they are trying to incorporate domestic discipline into their relationships specifically. And communication can be tough, and it can definitely be something that's an ongoing process and something you're always learning how to be better at. That has definitely been the case with us. Mm-hmm. And as I was thinking about how we have approached the topic of communication in the past, we've always talked about communication being a two-way street, and we've always kind of focused on communication from the taken in hand more than the communication from the head of household. So this episode, we're flipping the script. We're focusing on communication specifically from the head of household and why it is so important as a head of household to communicate with authority.
And head of households, I think this will really help you, because this is something that I will tell you is it's ongoing with me, something that I've really struggled with. And if you find yourself struggling in these same areas, I think this podcast is really going to be helpful for you today.
Absolutely. And so really the first point of communicating with authority is to choose your language carefully.
The reason I'm laughing is because she will be the first to tell you, this is something that I've struggled with. I'm getting better, but this is actually a lot harder than it sounds.
It is, because I think that as we grow up in society, and in a polite society, we are taught to be very polite and very somewhat passive in our language. And I think that's especially true of men these days.
Absolutely.
I think that there is this tendency to try to soften your language as a man in order to not be looked at as aggressive, mm-hmm. and not be looked at as rude. And so it's hard when you are trying to take the position of authority to then communicate with authority, because if you're using very soft, passive, and polite language, that can be communicating weakness in your statements unintentionally.
And you bring up a good point here, because you're absolutely right. I mean, just the way that it is nowadays, it's almost as if you make very definitive statements that people mistake that as aggression. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about here is you've got to learn to strike that balance. And because, yes, there is language that can be very aggressive and can be very combative, but that line is a lot further over than you think that it is, and at least I thought that it was. And so I think some of these things that we're going to talk about will really help you be able to realize, oh, when I am doing this, I am actually not being aggressive, but I'm being authoritative, and I'm letting her know exactly what it is that I want, even though there's going to be this, I think this unfair judgment in the overall society that that's not exactly the case.
And I think that we will get more into that when we talk about tone.
Yes.
Especially because, to me, aggression is more of a tone than it is specific words.
Absolutely.
But to really talk about this point of language before we move on, the first thing you really need to do is make sure that when you are directing your taken in hand, when you are making definitive statements, when you are giving directives, that you are doing that in a way that doesn't sound like a question. I was like, Coda's laughing because this is probably the biggest point of struggle that you have faced as a head of household.
Absolutely. Because again, in that attempt to not seem aggressive, to not seem rude, to not seem like I'm trying to be a dictator and all of those things, the things that I'm trying to get Arya to do come out as questions. Mm-hmm. And I've really had to think about, before I say something, is this going to come out as a question? And that can be really hard. Some of you head of households may be struggling with this.
Something as simple as part of my daily routine, part of the things that I do for Coda as my head of household, just as my husband, is I'd like to make sure that I am taking care of the things that he needs me to do, especially in our evening routine. And one of those things is making him like a hot tea before bed. And so he will let me know which kind of tea he would like. And he has gotten into this really bad habit that he is starting to shift now, his language around. But he would tell me, like, I would like you to make me some tea. or can you make me some tea? And those very passive statements really started to affect my own attitude internally, because of course I'm going to do what he asks me to do. But when he asks it as a question, internally I'm like, can I just say no? Because I'm kind of tired. I don't really want to. Can I? He asked it as a question, so is no an option? And so it creates a struggle within me that really just shouldn't be there. And so instead he has shifted to, I'd like my tea.
Yeah, and then, or I'll specify, I would like this type of tea. And instead of phrasing it as a question. Now, at first, that was hard for me because, again, I'm going against a lot of things that have been put in my mind as, oh, you're being rude, or you're being demanding, or you're being those things. And what I had to do to calm those voices, and head of households, as you're listening to this, what you have to do to calm those voices is say, no, these are things that we've already talked about. These are things that we've agreed to in our dynamic, all of the things that we've talked about before. So this is okay. And again, we'll get to tone in a minute, but it's all about how I ask it. But saying the words, I would like this kind of tea, and leaving it that's not a problem. That's not a rude way of saying it. It's not aggressive. It's not mean. It's letting her know that this is what I would like.
And even you, at one point, were saying, do you mind making me my tea?
Yes, I even tried to word it that way, just trying to switch the words around a little bit.
That was worse.
It was, absolutely.
Because again, if I was feeling a little tired, because it is the end of the night, if I was feeling like, I just kind of want to sit and do nothing for a minute, yeah, I kind of do mind. And is it okay for me to express that? No, because this is something that I have agreed to in my relationship. This is something that I actually do like doing, but creating that kind of internal thought process by the language that he was using when he was approaching the subject with me was creating struggle, where now it's like, this is the tea I would like tonight. It's not a question, and I don't have to go through that thought process of do I have to? Because unless if I have a legitimate reason, if I am actually sick or have something that came up that would legitimately prevent me from doing this, I can express that, of course.
Absolutely.
He's not unreasonable in that. But if it's just the matter of I'm feeling a little run down, I don't really want to do that, that's not something that I should even entertain the thought of. And by approaching it with the direct statements, and that's kind of our next point, is that you really do want to make your statements short and direct, especially when you're giving directives. By using short, direct statements, it makes it to where I don't have the idea that I can do something other than what I've been told to do.
And this is an area, again, the reason we're kind of bringing this up next is these go hand in hand. This is something that, because I struggled with the first one, I definitely struggled with this. And in some ways I still do. I'm getting better, as we were saying, but this is something. So if you're a head of household that's struggling with the first one and you're wondering why this next one you're struggling with, you got to get the first one right first before going to this. But this one is no more less important than what we've already talked about.
Because by giving direct statements, by making them as short as possible, that makes it to where there's not a lot of wiggle room. There's not a lot of room for the taken in hand to be confused. Because I think that when Koda was he would use more embellished language. He would try to even explain what he was saying, why he was saying it, maybe what his decision was, why he made that decision. When he was doing all of those things, it just created confusion within me. And then I didn't know, okay, what am I supposed to do?
It really is this simple about this scenario that I'm going to tell for you. Instead of saying, I'm going to go to the store, really what I was saying is, I'm going to go out, get in the car, put the keys in, then I'm going to drive to this particular store, go in and get this, when I could have just said, I'm going to the store. And so what she is saying is that is what we mean by direct statement. I am really, really good, instead of just getting to the point, really talking, trying to give all the details, which then brings confusion, which then also brings sometimes frustration, because when you give that many details, the first thing that I could see on her face is she's saying, I don't even know necessarily what he's asking. And from that confusion, is he asking me to do three things? And then the panic sets in. And really what you're doing, what I realize is, by not being that direct, what you're doing is you're setting your taken in hand a little bit up to fail. You don't mean to, It's not intentional, but you're setting them up to fail, to potentially have a spiral, to potentially get a punishment or correction just because you weren't direct enough with the statement. And so now what I'm realizing is being direct is not aggressive, it's not authoritative, it actually is a benefit to them because they understand they don't have to go through all the weeds, if you will. They know exactly what it is you're asking for and what you want. And actually, she's been more responsive. I've realized that's something that she's been wanting and asking for. And so I needed to kind of deprogram myself and realizing, no, that's okay to say, and so that she knows exactly what the expectation is.
And just to clarify, a lack of proper communication from Coda would not automatically mean that I get a punishment or correction.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
It would be because I respond poorly to him, and disrespect is disrespect regardless of what he did. And I always have a responsibility to respond appropriately and ask questions if I need to. And I think that that's the other part of this, is that make short, direct statements and then allow your taken in hand to ask questions if they are having any type of confusion about what they're being asked to do. So, you know, in Coda's example, if he said, hey, I'm going to the store, do you have any questions? This is kind of a bad example because that's not really a directive to me.
Right.
But I could ask him, like, does that mean that you want me to come with you? Are you telling me because you are asking me to come with you? Are you telling me because you want me to know that you're leaving the house? And that would be my question. And so he would give me the space to ask any clarifying questions I need to know in order to do what he's asking me to do, to meet expectations, to clear up any type of missing information that I have.
Absolutely. And so, you know, using that example of just being direct, now if you were to make a direct statement to your taken in hand and talking about the tea earlier, which is a good example, I would like this tea. And as opposed to, as she said earlier, can I have this tea because and now I go into the explanation, which that may sound really funny, but that's exactly what I used to do.
Well, and one thing that you used to do you would be like, I'm thinking about having this tea tonight.
Yes.
And then I would be looking at you like,
okay, and?
There was no question there. There was no directive there.
Yes.
There was no information that would indicate that, I mean, you're thinking about it. Have you decided?
Have you decided? Yes. And so what we're getting at is they don't need to know the whole process. What I didn't realize is I don't have to tell her, well, I'm thinking about this. No, think about it, make the decision, decide, and then come say, I would like this tea. And there is all of the things she needs to know. I want this tea. She already knows because we've already discussed this, when I would like it, the time, and all of those kind of things. But I don't have to explain in so many words. Really, what I've come to, for me, what I've done to try to tell myself to get out of this habit is don't speak in politician words. And we know what that means, regardless of where we are in the aisle there, that politicians, their job is to speak a lot about things where we just need to get to the point. And so I keep telling myself, Coda, don't be a politician, just be a head of household. And that's what I tell myself. And when I do that, I think that you've noticed that I'm a lot more direct that when I do that. But if I don't tell myself that, I start just drawing things out.
And by being direct, it comes off as very confident, where before, when you were like, I'm thinking about having my tea tonight, that doesn't come off as confident. That doesn't come off as decisive.
Yeah.
That leaves me wondering what you want from me. And so it causes a lot of breakdown. And you don't realize that these little moments, these little tiny interactions, that is what really makes or breaks your dynamic ultimately.
Absolutely. And that was one thing you brought up, a really good point, that I didn't realize, that it was coming off as a lack of confidence for her. It was coming off as, again, very passive, very undecided. On those things. Those are all things that I didn't realize that automatically in her goes, wait a minute, he is not leading very well. I'm a little worried. Is he confident? Is he sure of what he's been doing? What about the other things that he told me to do today? What about the things that he's going to tell me? You see all the different ways that it gives your taken in hand an opportunity really to spiral. And that's why I said you're almost setting them up to fail because of some of those things. And I just didn't realize that was promoting a lack of confidence rather than a confidence. And so be willing, even though it may feel totally weird at first, realize this is okay.
Now, the other thing is that for Coda, it's very important for him to still say please and thank you. This is something that we've had a lot of discussions with, because that was something that was starting to become a point of confusion for me. And the reason is because he wasn't being mindful of how he was using those words.
Right.
The words themselves are good. It's not bad to say please or thank you to your taken in hand, to show appreciation for what they do for you. That is not a bad thing. But how you do it really does matter. Because the reason it was becoming a point of confusion for me is because when Coda would say, would you please do this for me? That again comes off as a question.
Right.
Because it is a question, would you please? And he didn't realize that even putting please at the beginning of a statement was creating this confusion within the language. Now, given the tea example, instead of saying, please make my tea, because that's kind of pleading with me to say, would you please make my tea? He tells me, make my tea, please. That's different. At the end of the statement, it's I appreciate that you're going to do this for me.
Right.
Rather than, I'm begging of you, please make my tea. It lands so differently to the person that's receiving the statement.
And that is a perfect example there of where you place a word can really change how things are being received. And so what I didn't realize is by putting please or before the statement rather than after, how that was coming off. Even now, if I'm even to say thank you, I do it at the very, very end. Because again, it's making that very confident statement or making that directive very, very clear. And then, again, being polite. There's nothing wrong with, again, thanking your taken in hand for following through with the thing that you asked them to do. It's just about all where you place that. So it does come off as authoritative and confident, but at the same time, thank you for doing this, or I would like this kind of tea, please. All of those kind of things, it's just a different thing. And so now that's why I think about how I'm going to say things and how I'm going to word things and where certain words need to be in order for that to come off in the ways that you want it to come off.
And I think that because you mentioned thank you, and thank you has become a thing that you say either after I've completed the task.
Yes.
Or if you say, I would like my tea, please. And I say, yes, sir, and I start to do it, you'll say, thank you for always being willing to do this for me. That's different than, can you make my tea? Thank you.
Right, exactly.
It lands differently. It just does.
And then there are things now where she knows what I'm asking for. So, for example, the other day, I wanted more water in my water bottle. It was empty. I just handed it over to her, and I just said one statement. I said, thank you. She knew, I know exactly what he's asking for. He handed me the water bottle. He wants me to fill that up. And so I just said, thank you. And I think that went a long way because, again, it was a very confident statement. I didn't say it in a, mean, get me my water, anything like that. But she knows that that's something that I ask her to do. But we've done it enough now that she knows when I just pass her my water bottle and say thank you, she knows exactly what that means. But it doesn't come off passive to you, does it?
No, it really doesn't. I know, like Kodo was saying, I know exactly what's expected and I know what he's communicating. And it is direct and it is not phrased in a way that makes my brain say, is this an option? Now I have to consider my options.
Right, exactly.
And that kind of brings us to our next point, which is the tone. Tone is a big part of communication, and we talk a lot about the tone of the taken in hand and how tone can either communicate respect or disrespect. And I think the same is true for the head of household in his authority. I think that one of the biggest obstacles that Coda had to go through was to get the concept that authority is aggressive. He really had to work through that and realize that authority does not mean being aggressive or mean or tyrannical or belittling or degrading, right? None of those things are equal to authority because none of those things are healthy for a relationship, and authority is healthy for a relationship. And so you can be very authoritative in your tone, but still be very kind and still be very compassionate. Compassionate's a good word.
Yeah. You
can still be very compassionate, very kind, very just very receptive to your taken in hand and still have that authoritative tone.
It's funny that you brought this up because this was something that, believe it or not, in a different way, talking with one of my mentors last night, we got on a conversation about this very, very thing. And he said, well, you and I have had that kind of relationship in the time that you were mentoring with me, and he goes, you never felt at any point that I was being tyrannical over you or being mean or unkind to you. And I said, no. He goes, but there were times I gave you very direct statements of things that I wanted you to do. And all of a sudden the light bulb went on. I realized, oh yes, it's all in the tone. Because if he would have demanded something from me, if he would have been in this very mean tone, in this tone that it takes you back for a minute, that's different than when he used to say, hey, I really need you to do X, Y, and Z. And he would say it literally in that tone, but it was very definitive. It was very direct. No, it never bothered me. And so all of a sudden I realized, oh, that's exactly the way that I need to be approaching this with Aria.
Well, and even when your taken in hand has not met expectations or they've done something inappropriate, you can have a more stern tone, speak with absolute authority, but not be mean or degrading towards them. So yes, when you're giving directives, you can have the tone of, I need you to do this, and here are the things I need you to do, and you can lay it all out. But if they've failed to meet expectations, it's okay to say, this was inappropriate. And I can't really do it, but you know what I mean. Like, there's a difference between that and just really just belittling them.
One of the things that I've come to learn too is you can also, if you're taken in hand, doesn't meet expectations, saying, you didn't meet expectations here, and I expect more of you and want more of you, and hence why now you're going to get a correction for this or punishment. And that is really, I think, getting across that, you didn't meet expectations here, and I'm disappointed because I know that it's in you. The reason the expectation was there is because I expect more of you, and I know you can do that. That is still that you can come across in a very authoritative, but it comes across differently, and that's why I'm holding you accountable. And that is something that I think shouldn't be overlooked. That for a while also I didn't realize, wow, that just, I think, feels different to the taken in hand when you even word things that way.
I agree. I think that there's a definite difference between, you didn't meet expectations here, you're going to have accountability because I know you're better than this, and this is unacceptable, rather than you did this and that just irritates me, or that makes me angry, or how dare you not do what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
It's different, right? And you don't want to, as a taken in hand, especially with physical discipline in your relationship, you never want to feel like the reason you're being spanked is because your head of household is angry or irritated with you, or that he just, because there is a level of, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and that's a personal offense to me.
Right.
That the head of household has to have, but it has to be measured and it has to be in control, because if it's not, then it can become a really bad situation very quickly. And so you want to make sure that through the tone and the authority of your language, and even the way you are approaching it, that you are doing so in a way that builds the relationship up, not tears it down. And if you are coming at it with how dare you not do what you're supposed to do, that irritates me so much. Now I'm just completely off the rails, and I'm gonna just spank you right now.
And that right there is a perfect example of when it's become all about you, and it in fact has become what we always talk about, where it is not going to be a dictatorship. Now it's a dictatorship. However, coming from the other point of view of the reason that you are going to be disciplined for this is because, again, I know it's in you, I know you can do better, but the expectation is, hey, this particular thing let down our household. It let down all of the different things that we are trying to do to keep order, to keep peace, to keep continuity in our relationship. And can you see the difference there? One is just being a selfish offense. The other is realizing, hey, the reason the expectation is here, if you've forgotten, is for the overall good of our relationship and our home. And there's the difference.
And to work towards your goals.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And if you are coming at it from the standpoint of, I'm just so angry that I'm just going to let into you, that's an unhealthy relationship dynamic. It just is.
Absolutely.
And so you really want to make sure that you're setting your relationship up to be productive, to work towards your goals, to create balance and within the relationship, so that you create ultimately a better relationship for you and your taken in hand and everyone else involved.
And head of households, let me encourage you. This is not something you're going to fix overnight. It's not something that I have mastered yet. But the thing is to try to be very, very diligent. Try to be very, very intentional with developing these good habits. These, how you say things, the words that you use, the order you use those words in, and your tone. All of these are important, and it's just something, just like everything else, the more you practice, the better you'll get at it.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on our post show. We are going to be talking through the last point that we had on this subject, which is how to effectively lead conversations with authority. So if you want to hear that, definitely check out ways to get our post show. It's for members only, so you can either go through YouTube membership or Patreon membership. Links to all that is down below if you're interested in that. Otherwise, we will talk to you next time.
See y'all later.